I think a spiritual master or a guru can give any kind of a teaching which is true for him in his life. And then the question arises whether the disciples or the seekers who come to his feet to take those teachings, whether they have actually internalized those teachings or whether they are mere credulous believers and followers. Now, if they are mere followers and believers, then I think the teaching fails to be internalized. And if the teaching fails to be internalized, I think the teaching has failed in its mission of entering into the hearts of seekers and the disciples. Coming to the actual question which you raised about the relevance or the pertinence of the spiritual masters and the gurus in civilizations other than the Indian civilization, it seems to me that in any discipline of learning, it can be in an academic discipline like mathematics or engineering, that you always need a teacher who has gone ahead of you and assimilated the teaching and internalized it to such an extent that he has got enough clarity to present the truth of that teaching in his own original way. And then other seekers who are looking for the same truth, they have to first listen to the teaching. In the Advaitic tradition, there is a three-step process in the tradition. It is called Shravana. So you hear the teaching, you listen to it very deeply. Manana is the second stage, when you think deeply about the teaching. And Nididhyasana is the third stage, when you incubate and contemplate on it so deeply that the teaching comes to be internalized as a realization. So this is the process both in academic pursuits which are going on in the university and in the spiritual life. Now, the Hindu civilization or the Indian civilization is very spiritual in its basic approach to life, and therefore the teacher-disciple succession or tradition is very natural in that civilization. And if people who are seekers in the Western tradition want to come on the spiritual path, definitely they would stand to gain by anchoring themselves to a spiritual tradition which may not belong to their civilization, may not belong to their culture, but it would be worthwhile for them to anchor to the tradition and then start inquiring about the teachings which they are receiving, so that ultimately, after the three-step process, it comes to be internalized. Any teaching which is not internalized is of very little value, because then it doesn't sink into your blood, bone and muscle, into the cells as it were, and then you are not delivered. So that will not be of any value. That will in fact mean that the mission of the teaching has failed. So in a true transmission of the truth through a teacher-disciple chain, it's important that the teacher be there, that the guru be there. It is important that seekers be there and question the teacher or the guru, so that they come to actually absorb and get the realization, just as the guru himself has got the realization. So I think it's relevant universally, not just in the Indian civilization. Yes, these are real fears. Yes, in the hearts of seekers who are on the lookout for probably Eastern Buddhist or Hindu teachers, and there is some legitimacy in those fears, going by actual examples. But one of the things all seekers have to realize is that the spiritual path is as much laden with risk as our material path is laden with every kind of risk and every kind of obstacle. The spiritual path and the spiritual journey is never going to be a bed of roses for anybody just because he's anchored to a guru, and just because some holy book or some teaching has come into his hands. That is just the beginning. And then he has to actually work his way through the jungle of his consciousness so that he finally comes to the source of the light within himself. And on the path, definitely, because the spiritual master is human and the seeker is also human, there is every risk of a breakage in relationship, especially when the spiritual master or the guru and the disciple, their outlook and their expectation is contaminated by some kind of ulterior motive. And in the Hindu spiritual tradition, one is alerted to this risk in the very beginning, which is why before every satsang in which a guru and his devotees or his seekers sit together, they chant the Shanti mantra Sahana Vavatu. And in the Sahana Vavatu, there is a clause which says, may we never become jealous of each other, may we share together, may we learn together, may we have the vitality to explore together. So that's the sankalpa of the joint learning venture which the spiritual master and the seeker of truth are going on. And so one has to be alert, and otherwise the sense of individuality and the ego or the anger, at any time it can get the better of us. So this is a risk which is on the path for every teacher and for every seeker of truth and every disciple. And this, unless one is wary, one may not be able to get around this obstacle. One has to be very sensitive to the mischief of thought, the mischief of doubt, the mischief of the failure of faith, and one has to steer clear of all these obstacles and then finally come to the final realization.